Okay, so I'm now calling to order the case of Jordan Street versus Reese Taylor. It's cause of action number 18 CD 001-20. We're now ready to proceed with pretrial.
Good morning, Your Honor. May I make appearances?
You may.
My name is William Booth, and today I'm joined by my second chair, Ms. Samantha Di Giuseppe. And together, we represent the plaintiff, Ms. Jordan Street, in today's case. We do have some stipulations to read onto the record and some housekeeping to do as well before we get underway.
Sure, go ahead and do that. So
first, we did have a conversation with opposing counsel about some stipulations, but before I get into that, let's start with housekeeping. Your Honor, because of the online format of this jurisdiction, I just asked permission to remain seated throughout this trial during examinations and statements.
Y'all do whatever makes you comfy. I'm also just going to tell you, get this out of the way. You don't have to ask me to publish anything once it's submitted. Y'all do it however you want to do it, okay?
Great. And Your Honor, with that, I have no further housekeeping and I'm ready to move on to the stipulations.
Okay. Whenever you're ready with that.
So before trial, we actually, I had the opportunity to get a phone call in with Ms. Laity, and we stipulated to two things and then to one judicial notice that I'll make you aware of at that time.
Okay.
So first, we agreed to pre-admit Exhibit 14, which is the autopsy report that was done on Miss Rory Street in preparation for this case. And that's a public document, and we agreed to stipulate that into evidence today.
Okay.
And secondly, Your Honor, we stipulated that there would be no testimony regarding certain opinions that were contained in Mr. Jess Merriweather's deposition. And just by way of background, Your Honor, Mr. Merriweather was a health teacher and trainer on the soccer team that Miss Rory Street was a part of. And in Mr. Merriweather's deposition, he states that he saw Rory Street hanging out with some people that he thought did drugs. And so he thought it wouldn't be crazy that Rory was doing drugs as well. Now, I talked to opposing counsel and we stipulated that there would be no testimony regarding that incident from Mr. Merriweather's deposition.
If it comes up, just be sure to object and point it out to me, okay?
Great. And finally, Your Honor, that judicial notice I told you about, Exhibit 21 is a report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration detailing the weather in Waco, Texas on the day of the incident, the day where Rory Street died at the practice. Now, this document shows the weather on that day, and I'm asking that you take judicial notice that between 2:51 p.m. and 5:51 p.m., the temperature in Waco, Texas varied between 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
Any objection, Ms. Lady?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I will take notice of that.
And with that, Your Honor, we're ready to move on to opening statements.
Ms. Lady, give me 1 second. Let me set your 5 minutes for pretrial. Okay, ready when you are.
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to introduce myself. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Simone Leighty, spelled L-E-I-G-H-T-Y, and along with my second chair, Joshua White, we represent the defendant in this matter, Coach Reese Taylor. We do have one stipulation that we'd like to have noted for the record. Specifically, opposing counsel and I have agreed to not introduce any evidence contained within Coach Taylor's deposition, specifically on page 11, lines 20 through 23, and page 12, lines 1 through 12. And by way of background, Your Honor, this is testimony regarding Coach Taylor's prior employment at University High School in Waco, Texas, where he specifically left his job because of a prior incident with a student.
Okay.
And with that, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed to opening statements.
Excellent, short and sweet. Okay, give me 1 second and I'll set y'all's times. Hold on. All right, Mr. Booth, I am ready for your opening statement whenever you are, and I'll start the timer. You have 55 minutes total for the whole shebang, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
May it please the court, counsel. On September 7th, 2018, Rory Street died on a practice field at Waco High School. She was just 18 years old, but she was the star of her soccer team, and everyone who knew her, they knew she had a bright future ahead of her. Rory died from heat stroke. She died from heat stroke because her soccer coach, the defendant, Mr. Reese Taylor, forced her to physically exert herself to the point of death. And September 7th was a 105-degree day in Waco. The varsity team for the girls' Waco soccer team started practice at 3 p.m. on that day in the heat, right in the middle of the afternoon. And after about an hour of practice, well, Mr. Taylor, he got angry. This wasn't something that was surprising. He got angry all the time. He yelled at his student athletes. That was a part of practice. But whenever Mr. Taylor lost his temper, a student was going to pay. And that day, it was Rory Street who he had his sights set on. For some reason, Rory made him angry. She missed a shot. She missed a pass. Whatever it was, Rory was told by Mr. Taylor that she needed to go run sprints on repeat, without breaks, without water. Mr. Taylor's specific instructions to Rory were for her to go run until you pass out. But even after Rory did that, well, it still wasn't enough for the defendant. He lined up the rest of the players on the team. He called Rory over, and one at a time, he blew his whistle. And each time he blew his whistle, he instructed one member of that team to run up to Rory and to perform a slide tackle, to kick the legs out from under Rory so that she hit the ground. And under Mr. Taylor's instructions, Rory's team members did this over and over again. With each collision, Rory became weaker, hotter, more dehydrated. And when Rory collapsed on that field in the middle of this, what Mr. Taylor calls a drill, well, that wasn't good enough for Mr. Taylor. He saw Rory on the ground, so he walked over, grabbed her by the back of her jersey, and yanked her up. When she was on her feet, he looked her in the eyes and he said, "Keep going." After being tackled 15 times by her teammates, Rory collapsed again. But this time it was for good. Her internal body temperature was so high that at this point, her heart couldn't keep beating. Lying on that soccer field, with the defendant standing just a few feet away, Rory Street took her last breath. Your Honor, that's why we're here today. There's a difference between discipline and physical abuse. But this defendant, Mr. Reese Taylor, he crossed the line from discipline into physical abuse over and over again on that day. And when he crossed that line, he caused an 18-year-old girl to lose her life. We're here today to hold Mr. Taylor responsible for his actions. Because disciplining a student should never result in that student's death. And that's something I hope we can all agree on. And today, I represent Jordan Street, Rory's mom. Together, we've brought a wrongful death case against the defendant, Reese Taylor, for negligently causing Rory Taylor's death. Under the law, Mr. Taylor owed Rory, his player, his student athlete, a duty to conduct practice and administer discipline in a safe and reasonable manner. When the defendant forced Rory to engage in dangerous and unnecessary drills and to do all of it in 105-degree weather, he breached that duty to Rory and caused her death. Today, we'll prove to you that the defendant knew, or at least should have known, of the severe health risks associated with the way that he was choosing to enforce discipline. We'll show that these risks were staring him in the face, but he disregarded them. As Your Honor knows, it is our burden to prove this case to you. And we have to prove it by a preponderance of the evidence, just more likely than not, that the negligence of the defendant proximately caused Rory Street's death. We welcome this burden. We'll meet it today with evidence, witnesses, and facts. And first, you're going to hear from Aubrey Saracen, a senior soccer team member at Waco High School. Miss Saracen was an eyewitness at Rory's last practice. And Miss Saracen will tell you exactly how the defendant was treating Rory in the hours leading up to her death. You'll hear how the defendant used multiple drills to penalize, to take out his anger on Rory because he felt she was being lazy, that she wasn't listening to his feedback. You'll hear that the defendant pushed Rory to the point of physical exhaustion, and then he just kept pushing. And when Rory was no longer able to stand on her own 2 feet, when she fell on the ground and couldn't raise herself back up, it still wasn't good enough for Mr. Taylor. He saw her lying on the ground, clearly struggling, and his only thought was to get her back up on her feet so someone else could knock her down again. You'll hear Miss Saracen describe just how brutal this supposed drill was. You'll hear how, because of the actions of Coach Taylor, Rory fell to the ground, convulsing, not breathing. She passed away right in front of her teammates on that field. Your Honor, you're going to look at Rory Street's official autopsy, a report that says that Rory passed away from sudden cardiac death. You'll also see an expert report from a cardiologist who explains that Rory's behavior and symptoms leading up to her death were entirely consistent with heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And today, the defendant has also raised an affirmative defense. The defendant made the choice before coming to court today to take on the burden of proving to you that Rory, she caused her own death. The defense alleges that at some point before soccer practice on September 7th, 2018, Rory Street ingested a small amount of cocaine. And they allege that that caused her death. And there's a toxicology report in this case that tells us that Rory had 60 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine in her system when she died. We're not disputing that. But the problem for the defendant is that they just won't be able to prove to you that that cocaine had any relationship to Rory's death. They won't be able to tell you when Rory ingested it or how much she even had. And today, when you look at the official autopsy report, you're going to see that our expert report, in conjunction with that autopsy report, it just makes much more sense. Rory didn't die because there was cocaine in her system. The evidence will show that she died from a heat stroke because this defendant forced her to physically exert herself to the point of death. Your Honor, Rory Street should be here today. She should be here today. She should be here tomorrow and all the days after that. She should be here to graduate from high school, to go on to college, to achieve all of those milestones that we want our own kids to see. But she can't. Rory's death was entirely preventable, but this defendant crossed a line on September 7th, 2018. He crossed the line between discipline and physical abuse, and as a result, 18-year-old Rory Street is no longer with us. Your Honor, at the end of this trial, I'm going to come back before you and ask you to find Mr. Taylor liable for his actions. Thank you.
You have 44-46 remaining. All right, Simone, can you say your last name for me one more time so I can get it correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Lighty?
Lighty. Okay. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, opposing counsel. It wasn't the coach, it was the cocaine. When Coach Taylor saw that one of his players was goofing off for practice, he implemented disciplinary measures to get Rory Street's head right back in the game. You see, on September 7th, 2018, the drills somehow couldn't shake Rory's lack of focus. Drills that were rigorous and physically taxing, sure. They're the same drills that he and his teammates had performed without trouble time and time again. So Coach Taylor designed a drill to ensure Rory's attention was captured. A row of slide tackles, a play which Rory himself as a star player had not only perfected at practice, but had executed during games. So you see, it was completely unexpected when Rory suddenly collapsed. Not a single person on that field knew that Rory had entered practice with cocaine in his system. Rory told no one, not his teammates, not the trainer, and certainly not the head coach. See, the sad truth is, all of the discipline, intervention, and safety measures could not have prevented this tragedy. Because when it came to Rory Street's death, it wasn't the coach, it was the cocaine. Good morning. My name is Simone Lighty, and along with my second chair, Joshua White, we have the honor of representing Reese Taylor. All right, so he's better known around here, Coach. You see, a moment ago, opposing counsel got up here and they told you a story about a selfish coach who disciplined to the point of abuse. But it's just that, a work of fiction. So allow me to reintroduce Reese Taylor. Normally, Mr. Taylor would be sitting right here next to me in court, but from the other end of his camera, he's going to get a chance to introduce himself to you. Because today, he's going to tell you exactly what happened on September 7th, 2018. You see, Coach Taylor was born and raised right here in Waco. Except for the time that he left to go get a physical education degree from Texas A&M. And following college, he returned back home. He eventually settled in a position as not only a teacher, but a coach at his alma mater, Waco High. As I just said, he was a health teacher first, someone who cared about his students, who encouraged them to remain focused. But he was also someone who dedicated the better part of the last 26 years coaching just about every single sport you can imagine. And that included soccer. You see, soccer is what some people consider a passive sport. But at Waco High, and most other places, it was actually a physical one that was grueling, one that was taxing, and one that required extensive preparation. Sure, Coach Taylor was tough on his kids, as a coach should be. But he loved them. And he viewed each and every one of those players as one of his own. Rory was no different. You see, for Coach Taylor, keeping up on the latest and best coaching techniques and practices not only helped his teammates, but helped him be a better coach. That's why he spent each and every practice implementing drills and conditioning his players. And September 7th, 2018 was no different. You see, that day the team had a full team scrimmage, simulating one of the games that they would see later on in the season. But But from the moment that Rory Street entered practice that day, Coach Taylor noticed that something was off. See, Rory Street's head wasn't in the game. He was playing sloppy, missing easy passes, running onto the ball in bad positions, and missing wide open shots, everything that he had somehow mastered with ease in every single practice before, and yet here today on September 7th, he was struggling. You see, this was important, because for the hour or so that the team was scrimmaging outside in the hot Waco heat, well, physically, Rory looked just fine. And he certainly showed no signs of heat exhaustion, and he certainly never complained. The truth is, this wasn't someone who was suffering, it was someone who just simply wasn't taking the scrimmage seriously. We now know, and as you'll learn throughout trial today, unbeknownst to Coach Taylor, Rory Street had entered the soccer field that day with cocaine in his system. And you see, this created a ticking time bomb as soon as he stepped on that field. Let me explain. What you're going to learn today is that cocaine can constrict your blood vessels. It raises your body temperature. It puts you in a position of risk, especially when you're out on a soccer field, physically exerting yourself for hours and hours on end. But more importantly, cocaine can cause something called hyperthermia. That means that when you're out in the hot Waco sun and you're trying to cool off, the cocaine prevents your body from doing just that. So in a practice where everyone else seemed fine and they were able to handle the heat, the cocaine in Rory's system invited tragedy. See, after a while, Coach Taylor got frustrated. He knew that Rory wasn't performing as he should be, so he sent him off to do something called Burma Road. What you're going to hear throughout trial today is that Burma Road was a tried and true tradition at Waco High, something that existed long before Coach Taylor returned back home. Basically, it's a soccer drill. 30 yards one way, 30 yards of dribbling another way, 60 yards of bear crawling, something that every teammate did almost at every single practice. But you see, it requires some physical exertion, but not so much that it could endanger an athlete. Because as Coach Taylor will tell you today, he would never do that to his kids. You may hear from someone called Aubrey Saracen today. And she may tell you, and as you'll learn, she did this very drill for about 15 minutes without any problem. But Rory does it for a couple minutes, and all of a sudden is apparently struggling. What you're going to learn today is that the only difference between Aubrey and Rory that day is that Aubrey didn't have cocaine in her system. After Coach Taylor noticed that he was still drifting, excuse me, Your Honor.
Also, time.
You get the lights back on.
Whenever you're ready. Well,
Your Honor, unless you'd like me to wait. There we go.
there you go.
Okay. Thank you. You see, at this point, Rory was still goofing off. He wasn't performing the Bermuda drill just as he was required to. And so Coach Taylor sent him to another drill. But this time, it would require more skill and more focus. Slide tackles. So he set up each and every one of his teammates, each and every one of his students, and they performed slide tackle after slide tackle after slide tackle against Rory. Again, this was something that was mentally and physically exhausting, but it was dangerous when you added the mixture of cocaine. You're going to learn about a toxicology report in this case, and it's going to tell you that in Rory's system on September 17, 2018, he had cocaine running through his veins. And what you're going to hear from a toxicologist named Stephen London is that although on the report itself, it seemed like just a nominal amount, in reality, because the blood was drawn 26 hours after the incident, the amount of cocaine in his system could have been substantially more. At the end of this trial, you and I are going to have an opportunity to talk again. I'm going to ask you to find Reese Taylor not liable. Because at the end of the day, Rory Street put himself at risk. And this isn't about a coach. This is about cocaine. Thank you.
You have 45-23 remaining. All right, Mr. Booth, ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. And before I call my first witness who is present today, I request permission to read in portions of the deposition from the plaintiff, Miss Jordan Street. And in this jurisdiction, we are permitted to read in portions of an unavailable witness's deposition, and consistent with stipulations for this case, Miss Street is unavailable at trial today.
Any objections, Ms. Lighting?
No, Your Honor.
And I already showed these portions to opposing counsel, but first directing the court and counsel to page 2, that's where we'll be reading from, starting at line 6, going down to line 16.
Go ahead.
May I proceed?
You may.
Question. Good morning. Please state your name for the record. Answer. My name is Jordan Street. Question. How old are you? Answer. I'm 55 years old. Question. Where are you from? Answer. I live in Waco and have all my life. Question. Are you married? Answer. I am not. I was married, but my spouse passed away several years ago. Question. Do you have any children? Answer. I did. My daughter, Rory. Then directing court and counsel again on the second page, lines 23 to 24. Question. What happened to Rory? Answer. She died at soccer practice on September 7th, 2018. And with that, Your Honor, I'm ready to call my first witness.
You may do so.
Plaintiff calls Aubrey Saracen.
Ms. Sarah is previously sworn, so go ahead.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Aubrey Saracen.
How old are you, Aubrey?
I'm 19 years old.
And where do you live?
I live here in Waco, Texas.
How long have you lived here?
I've lived here my whole life.
You said you're 19. What do you do? Are you in school?
Yeah, I am about to start college in the fall.
Where are you expecting to start college at?
Rice University.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Waco High here in Waco.
And when did you graduate?
I graduated this past spring, 2018, I believe.
So I want to step back. In the fall of 2018, what grade were you in?
I was in my senior year.
So how did you become involved in this case?
Well, I'm best friends with Rory, or I was best friends with Rory, and we're also on the same soccer team.
Would you recognize a picture of Rory Street if you looked at one?
Of course.
Aubrey, could you turn to Exhibit 3 of your exhibit notebook and let me know when you're there?
Yes, I'm there.
Do you recognize the document marked as Exhibit 3?
Yes.
What is it?
That's a picture of my best friend, Rory Street.
Do you have an idea of when this picture was taken?
This looks like it was during her senior year, so this past year.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of Rory Street as you knew her?
Yes.
Your Honor, we offer this photograph marked as Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Ms. Giuseppe, can we display that image? Aubrey, is this the picture you were looking at in your notebook?
Yes,
Who's in this picture?
that's Rory Street.
How long did you know Rory before the fall of 2018?
I've known her basically my whole life. I mean, we grew up together. We've always, we went over to each other's houses and played together, and we've always played soccer together.
Was Rory a good athlete?
Oh yeah, she was by far the best on the team, and I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Ms. Giuseppe, we can take that photo down now. Thank you. Now, Aubrey, do you remember September 7th, 2018?
Yes, I'll never forget it.
What were you doing that day?
I was at soccer practice with Rory and the rest of my teammates.
When you say soccer practice, what team were you on?
I was on my high school's soccer team,
And what high school was that?
Waco High,
And was this the junior team, the varsity team? Which was it?
the varsity soccer team.
When did practice start that day?
It started around 3:15 p.m.
What was the weather like when practice started?
Oh man, it was scorching hot, a typical super hot Waco afternoon.
Do you know what temperature it was exactly?
I don't know exactly, but it had to have been in the hundreds at least.
So it was hot, you get to practice. Did you know what you were supposed to be doing at practice that day?
Yeah, I mean, we were running a scrimmage with coach,
And when you say coach, who are you referring to?
Mr. Taylor, the defendant in this case.
So you're doing a scrimmage. How did that go?
It was going okay. I ended up not doing very well, so I had to go run a drill, but coach seemed to be taking a lot of anger out on Rory that day for some reason.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. First, you said that you did something to get in trouble. Do you remember what?
I think I just made a couple wrong passes.
And when you did that, what happened?
I had to go run Burma roads.
What does that mean? What does it mean to run Burma Road?
It's a punishment that coach uses for us when we're not really playing well or didn't do something right. And it's a drill where you essentially have to run for 30 yards on a field, and then you have to dribble the ball. So you kick the ball forward, and then you try to score on an open goal without a goalie. And then you have to bear crawl the whole way back the full 60 yards that you ran.
Where was this practice taking place?
This was at my high school.
Are there fields at your high school?
Yes.
While you were sent to go run Burma Road, were you still with the rest of the team?
I was on a separate field than our scrimmage practice field, but I was still in the same area.
Would you recognize a photograph of those practice fields at Waco High if you looked at one now?
Yes.
Directing your attention to Exhibit 2 in the exhibit notebook, and just let me know when you're there.
Okay, I'm there.
Do you recognize the document marked as Exhibit 2 in your notebook?
Yes.
What is it?
That's the soccer fields at my high school, and it shows the main scrimmage field that we were practicing on, as well as the field that we ran the Burma roads on.
Is this photograph a fair and accurate depiction of those practice fields?
Yes.
Your Honor, plaintiff offers Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It is admitted.
Ms. Giuseppe, can we display Exhibit 2? Okay, so I think you just went over it a little bit, but could you explain exactly what we're looking at in this photograph, Aubrey?
Yes, so the smaller red square is over where I was running Burma Road, and then the bigger blue rectangle is where our typical practices were always held. That's
Okay, so So at this point in the practice, you're in the red box. The rest of the team is in the blue box. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct.
How far away were you from the rest of the team at that time?
I would guess probably around 20 yards.
Could you see Rory at that time?
Yes.
What was she doing?
She didn't look too good. She was really pale and she just didn't look like herself. And coach was just nagging on her.
What do you mean nagging?
I mean, he was yelling at her and saying that, she couldn't make these easy passes and was just riding her all practice.
So what happened after you heard coach giving Rory some trouble?
Well, after, she wasn't performing, I guess, the way that he expected her to, he yelled at her and he said, "Go and take your sorry butt to run Burma roads." He literally said to her that she was useless and she needs to run until she passes out.
I want to stop there for a moment. Could you see Mr. Taylor when he was yelling those things at Rory?
Yes.
What was his demeanor?
He was really angry.
So what happened after you heard Mr. Taylor say those things to Rory?
Well, after that, Rory ran over to me and because I was already running the Burma roads, and then we had to run them together.
Now you said that practice started, and thank you, Sam. You said that practice started at around 3:15, 3:30. Do you remember what time it was that Rory came to join you on running Burma Road?
Yes, it was probably about 4:30, maybe a few minutes after.
And at that time, when you saw Rory up close, how did she seem?
She did not seem good. She looked super pale and she was clearly struggling to do what coach was asking her to do, and was really struggling with the Burma roads.
Did you ask Rory how she was feeling?
No, but it was pretty apparent that I did ask her how she was feeling.
Do you remember what she told you?
Yeah, she said that she was all right, but that she had pain in her chest and that she was feeling really funny.
Did you ever ask her any follow-up questions, get any more information from her?
No, at that point, I just thought we could get through the drill and just focus to getting to the end of practice.
So what happened next?
Well, after that, Rory was still really dogging it, I guess, in Coach Taylor's eyes, Mr. Taylor's eyes. And so he yells over from the practice field and he yells over to us and he says, "You think you're so special, Rory. I'm going to make you see just how special you are, or how special you are not, rather." And he just thought she was lollygagging. So he called her over to the practice field again.
So you saw, and at this point, what was Mr. Taylor's demeanor?
He was still very angry like he was before.
Okay, so what happened after Rory got called over by Mr. Taylor?
Well, Coach Taylor had everyone on the team line up on the line, and then had Rory kick the ball towards them, and then the whole team was going to try to slide tackle Rory in a line, like one person at a time.
And did that actually happen? Did the drill actually start?
Yes, the drill started, and Rory was running and didn't look good, but tried to keep going. But she kept getting slide tackled and falling to the ground every time.
Could you describe what a slide tackle is in the context of soccer?
Yes, so it's when a player is dribbling the ball or just kicking the ball forward, trying to move it forward on the field, and a defensive player comes and tries to take the ball away by literally sliding on the grass or turf and trying to tackle the other person so that they either fall or so that they can steal the ball away.
And during this drill, you said that you saw Rory falling?
Yes, she fell every time she got slide tackled.
How did she seem to you when this drill started?
She did not look good. I mean, the whole time she didn't look good. She was really pale still, and she was huffing and puffing and had her hands on her hips, and she just really looked distressed.
Do you know how many times this drill was run?
I would say probably around 15 times. That's probably right.
At any time during this drill, did you see Mr. Taylor put his hands on Rory?
Yes.
Could you describe that?
Yes. So earlier in the drill, maybe after 4 or 5 times being tackled, Rory was really struggling to get up. And so Mr. Taylor just walked over to her, yanked her on her jersey, and pulled her up to standing, and said that she had to keep going. And it was very physical, and it seemed very aggressive.
After Mr. Taylor pulled Rory to her feet, did Rory keep going?
Yes, she did. She tried.
And you said that this happened about 15 times. What caused it to stop?
Well, one time, shortly after she was yelled at, she just fell after being slide tackled. And after that, she just started convulsing on the ground and looked like she was having a seizure. And she just never got up again after that.
How did you react to that?
I was so shocked. I mean, I expected during the drill, for it to be hard, but it seemed like out of the blue, she just collapsed and never got back up. It was really scary.
I want to back up a little bit, Aubrey. During this whole practice, did the team ever take a break for water?
No.
After you and Rory started doing that exercise you called running Burma Road, were you and Rory given a break of any kind?
No.
Did you ever hear Rory ask for a break?
No.
Did you ever say anything to Coach Taylor about Rory?
No.
Well, Aubrey, is there a reason why you didn't say anything?
Yes, there's a reason.
What was it?
Because that only makes Mr. Taylor more mad. When anyone complained at practice or said something was wrong with them, he just got more mad and would increase the punishment. So we knew it was in our best interest to not say anything at practice.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper character evidence.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Lady.
Your Honor, Ms. Saracen has just described behavior by Coach Taylor, as she outlined had occurred before, by which had given her and her other teammates the impression that they shouldn't be complaining or letting Coach Taylor or the trainer know when they're not feeling well. That in and of itself is describing a pattern of behavior, which is in fact inadmissible character evidence.
Mr. Booth?
Your Honor, this is admissible character evidence under Rule 404B. This is a prior wrong or other act that Mr. Taylor engaged in, and we're offering this evidence not as propensity evidence to say that Mr. Taylor acted one way in the past and therefore acted that way on this specific occasion. And instead, we're offering this to show the knowledge that students on that team had of Mr. Rory or Mr. Taylor's past behavior and what complaining would lead to. And that's a key part of our case, Your Honor.
Response to that?
Your Honor, as it sounds to me, opposing counsel is in fact offering this for propensity purposes, that because Coach Taylor had acted in a certain pattern in allegedly disallowing his students to inform him when they were in pain or wanted to take a break, that is exactly how he acted on September 7, 2018, which compelled neither herself nor Rory to inform Coach Taylor when something was wrong on that day. We do believe that this does not fall within 404B and is still inadmissible character evidence.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection just because I think Mr. Booth is correct. I think he's laying out, sort of the state of mind that the decedent may have been in at the time this isn't being offered, I think, for the purpose of, that he acted in conformity with the way that he had acted in the past. However, if it veers that direction, feel free to re-raise this objection, but it's overruled for now.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm going to ask you that question one more time. Is there a reason you didn't say anything to Mr. Taylor about Rory?
Yes.
What was it?
That he would always get really mad if anyone complained or said something about how hard, the drill was. So we knew it was in our best interest just to not say anything so we could get through practice.
Did Mr. Taylor ever go and ask Rory if she was okay at any time on
No.
September 7th?
No.
Pass the witness.
2826 for me. All right, Miss Lady, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Saracen.
Morning.
As a said on direct examination, you and Rory were really good friends, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you both played soccer together
Yes.
under Coach Taylor's guidance.
Yes.
Now, you'd agree with me, Rory Street was the best player on your team.
Yes.
In fact, she was so good that when she was scrimmaging, Rory wouldn't be out of position, correct?
Yes.
She would be making passes quite easily.
Yes.
She'd be scoring goals left and right,
Yes.
certainly wide open shots, correct?
Yes.
And if she wasn't running around on the soccer field with ease, you'd expect there to be something wrong, right?
Yes.
Now, on September 7th, 2018, as you said on direct examination, Rory wasn't acting like her usual self.
That's correct.
In fact, from what you witnessed, Rory was being quite sloppy at practice.
Coach sure thought she was.
Right. Coach thought that she was out of position.
Yes.
Coach felt that she was missing easy passes.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, just to the speculative way that these questions are being phrased.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor, asking this witness what Mr. Taylor thought in that moment, it calls for the mental state of another person and outside of the rationally based perception of this witness.
Your Honor, I can rephrase the question.
Please do. Let's just keep it to what she had knowledge of. So I'm going to sustain that objection insofar as you're asking, what was Coach Taylor's state of mind at the time. Let's just keep it to what she's able to testify to, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Ms. Saracen, you were on the soccer field right next to Rory when you heard Coach Taylor say she was missing easy passes, correct?
Yes.
You heard Coach Taylor yell that she was missing wide open shots.
Yes.
And so eventually, Coach Taylor sent her over to you to run Burma Road.
Yes.
Okay? Now, to be clear, Burma Road isn't an actual road, right?
Right.
Because it's a drill.
Yes.
And you and Rory were doing the exact same exercise, weren't you?
Yes.
Doing the same exact movements,
Yes.
side by side to one another,
Yes.
in the same heat, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, to you, this was just another drill that you had been repeating over and over until Rory showed up.
Yes.
But Ms. Saracen, when you were performing the Burma Road drills, you weren't struggling, correct?
I was struggling.
Well, in comparison to Rory, you certainly weren't struggling.
No, she looked really ill.
And that happened after just mere minutes of performing these drills, didn't it?
Well, no, it happened over the course of an hour and a half of practice.
Well, let me be more clear, Ms. Saracen. As soon as Rory joined you to do the Burma Road drills, after minutes, she looked like she was struggling, correct?
Yes, she came over looking like she was already struggling.
She was complaining to you.
Yes.
As you said on direct examination, she was having chest pains.
She did say that, yes.
Rory told you that she was feeling funny.
Yes.
Ms. Saracen, you didn't know that at the time Rory had cocaine in her system, right?
No. No, I did not know that.
As you guys were running Burma Road and you saw that Rory was struggling, you'd agree with me, Rory never stopped running, correct?
Correct.
Never stopped sprinting,
No.
never stopped dribbling the ball.
Nope.
Ever stopped to ask for a break?
No.
Never took a break?
Nope.
Never went and got a drink of water?
Nope.
Never stopped to speak with the trainer, right?
Right.
I certainly never marched over to Coach Taylor to go talk to him.
Definitely.
Correct? In fact, as far as you, I'm sorry, what was that?
No, sorry, go ahead.
As far as you know, Miss Saracen, Rory never told anybody on that field what he was feeling.
Besides me.
Now, it was just a short time after that Coach Taylor brought him back out from Burma Road, back onto the field, correct? Or,
Yes.
excuse me, from doing the Burma Road drills back onto the main field.
Correct.
And because Coach Taylor said to you that, excuse me, because as Coach Taylor had yelled, he believed Rory was just goofing around with you, right?
He said that she was lollygagging.
Right. And so what he did was he stopped the scrimmage and he set up a tackle line, a slide tackle, correct?
Yes.
Now, it's not uncommon to do slide tackle drills during practice, right?
Well, we'd never done this drill before, so this was very uncommon.
Ms. Saracen, I'm not asking about this specific drill. I'm talking about slide tackles in general. That's a play that happens during games, correct?
Yes.
It's something that you want to practice at scrimmages.
Yes.
And it's something that you practice on September 7th, 2018.
Yes.
But if I'm clear about your positioning, Ms. Saracen, as Rory was conducting these slide tackle drills, you were 20 yards away, weren't you?
Yes.
It's from 20 yards away that you claim Rory was acting slow,
Yes.
and I believe your words were almost lifeless.
Yes.
And in fact, Ms. Saracen, you thought that this behavior was odd, didn't you?
Yes.
But it wasn't odd enough for you to go tell anybody, right?
I wanted to, but I knew I'd get in trouble if I did.
Saracen, thank you for that answer, but just bring me back to my question. It wasn't odd enough for you to go actually tell somebody. Am I right?
Correct.
But you did discuss what you saw on September 7th, 2018 with another person, didn't you?
Yes.
That was the very next day.
Yes.
That was when a friend of yours had reached out to you asking what happened to Rory, correct?
Yes.
The very next day, Ms. Saracen, that would have been fresh in your mind, right?
Yes, I was in shock.
You would have wanted to make sure that you were accurate in what you were telling this friend about what happened to Rory Street.
That was not my main concern, no.
Well, let's talk about what you did say. What you told this person was that, well, everything happened so suddenly, correct?
Yes.
That you were right there the whole time next to Rory?
Objection, Your Honor. Under the best evidence rule, I would just object that discussing the contents of this text conversation is improper, given that we do have the original available.
This lady.
Your Honor, I'm happy to admit the exhibit into evidence.
You need to prove it up too to get it in, right? Or is this one of the pre-admitted exhibits?
Your Honor, it's not, but I will be laying foundational questions at this time.
Okay, so I'll sustain the objection. Let's go ahead and set, lay out whatever you need to do to prove it up, and then let's get it admitted before we go down the line of questioning, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Saracen, as we just spoke, you had texted a friend the next day, so that would be September 8th of 2018, correct?
Yes.
If I showed you a copy of that text message, do you think you'd be able to recognize it?
Yes.
I believe opposing counsel mentioned that you had a notebook in front of you.
Yes.
If you could pull up exhibit 22.
Okay. I've got it pulled up.
You recognize this exhibit, don't you?
Yes.
Because it displays your friend's text messages as well as your text messages the next day after Rory Street died.
Yes.
This is a fair and accurate copy of that text conversation, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Now, at this time, we move to admit exhibit 22, which is a text message conversation between Operator Saracen and a gentleman named Wooderson, into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Booth?
No objection to that, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted and you can publish it.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Saracen, if you could take a look at the blue bubbles, which would be your responses.
Okay.
What you said in that first response was, I was right there the whole time, correct?
Yes.
And that Rory just collapsed out of nowhere. Yes?
Yes.
And then in that second response, you said it was just so sudden, correct?
Yes.
I want to be clear about what you didn't mention to this friend of yours. You didn't say anything about Rory being pale, correct?
Correct.
Nothing about him looking lifeless on the field.
Correct.
Nothing about him clutching his chest in pain.
Correct.
Nothing about being worried for his behavior or thinking that he was acting odd.
No, I didn't say that.
And you certainly didn't say that, well, Rory was complaining to me, right?
No, I didn't mention that.
Ms. Saracen, Coach Taylor as a coach, well, his job is to get you to play better at soccer, correct?
Yes.
To do these drills would help improve your performance at the games, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And as a student athlete, you're expected to listen to your coach, aren't you?
Yes.
And you're certainly expected to show up to practice sober, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Got 3550 remaining. Any redirect, Mr. Booth, or can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, give me 1 second to reset your time then. All right, ready whenever you are.
Now, Aubrey, you were just asked some questions about text messages you sent. In that text message conversation, did you provide all the details you had about September 7th?
No, I mean, I'm not going to write out a detailed explanation of how my friend had just died.
So can you explain why you've given us more detail today?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Hey, can you explain why now you have more details to tell when in that text conversation you didn't?
Yes, because now I'm here. I'm trying to tell everyone the story of what happened to my best friend, and I want to be able to tell the whole story. It's not just an emotional text I sent to my friend the day after my best friend died.
Another thing you were asked about is you were asked about whether or not you and Rory were doing the same kinds of drills. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did you and Rory do the same drills that day?
We did the Burma Road, but I did not have to do the slide tackles that she did.
Who was the? I apologize, Aubrey. I didn't mean to cut you off. If you would like to finish.
I just meant that we only did the Burma Roads together. I didn't also do the slide tackling.
Of everyone on the team at practice that day, who did that slide tackling drill?
It was only Rory who had to do that, and then my teammates were just a part of it where they were the slide tackling her.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further, or can the witness be excused? Ms. Lighting?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing further from you, Mr. Booth, either, it sounds like. Okay, so Mr. Booth.
Not for this witness, Your Honor, no.
Oh, yes, of course, of course. You've got 2656 left. You may be excused, Ms. Saracen.
Your Honor, before we rest our case, ask permission to publish and then read off of Exhibit 14, which is the autopsy report that was entered into evidence during pretrial by stipulation.
Sure, you can do so.
And I apologize, Your Honor. I also would ask permission to read in a portion of Exhibit 16. So first I'll start with 14, and then I'll move on to 16.
That's perfect.
And directing court and counsel to page 1 of the autopsy report marked as Exhibit 14. On September 8th, 2018, at approximately 1930 hours, I performed an autopsy on the body of Rory Street, deceased, McLennan County Memorial Hospital's Pathology Department in Waco, Texas. From the anatomic and laboratory findings and pertinent history, I ascribe the death to sudden cardiac death. And now, Ms. DiGiuseppe, if we can move on to Exhibit 16. Directing your attention to page 2 of this document, where Dr. McConaughey states, "Here is the opinion that I have reached in this case. Based on a reasonable degree of professional and/or medical certainty, Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke." And with that, Your Honor, I rest my case in chief, conditioned on possible rebuttal evidence depending on what comes up if defense chooses to put on the case.
That's fine. So you've got 25, 34 remaining.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, you can call your first witness, Ms. Lighty. It's you've got 35, 50.
Yes, Your Honor. Is it possible to just have a 2-minute break, Your Honor?
I would echo that.
We can take a 2-minute break. Just let's be pretty quick with it. And scoring judges, you're free to run to the bathroom, but if you do, please turn your camera on. That way we're aware that you're away, okay? Thank you. Go ahead and let's do it quickly. All right, so you've got 35, 50 left, and you are free to call your first witness or proceed however you're going to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense would like to call Coach Reese Taylor to the stand.
And Mr. Taylor, Coach Taylor was previously sworn. Whenever you all are ready.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
Morning.
What do you do for a living?
I am a soccer coach at Waco High.
Is that what your academic background was in?
I got a degree from A&M in physical education. So I also teach health class.
How long have you been coaching?
For the better part of 2.5 decades.
And how would you describe your experience as a coach?
Good, successful. Been a part of a lot of winning teams, a lot of great programs.
Coach Taylor, do you have any sort of specialized training or qualifications as a coach?
I've got my extensive experience. I've been doing this for quite some time. Played as an athlete myself. I go to trainings and seminars and stuff.
And when you're coaching your students, do you have a particular focus in mind?
Definitely want to push my players to be the best they can be to achieve all of their potential.
And during practices, or scrimmages, or games, is it just you out there with the students?
No, of course, we've got a coaching staff and a trainer, Jess Merriweather, that's out there with us.
Now, you mentioned that you were Rory's coach. How would you describe your relationship with Rory Street?
She was a player and student, of course, but also I'd say we had a healthy player-coach relationship. I cared for all the players on my team. It's like a family to me.
Coach Taylor, do you understand why it is that you're here today?
Yeah. Rory passed away at practice in September, and that's why we're here. Talk about that.
Well, you just described your relationship with Rory. Can you tell us a little bit about what Rory was like as an athlete?
Rory was almost superhuman with the ball at her feet at times, especially in games and critical situations. She was one of the best players on the team, no doubt. And I think that a lot of the players on the team actually looked up to her because of it. She was fantastic.
Well, you just described Rory as being superhuman at practice. Was she always living up to her potential?
Not in September, on September 7th. No, not specifically that day. She wasn't performing. She didn't seem like she was taking things as seriously as she sometimes did during games.
Okay, well, let's dive a little further into September 7th, 2018. As you said, that was the day that Rory passed away. Can you tell us how the beginning of practice started?
So that day, we began practice around 3:15. That's the typical time we started after classes and everything. And then just to get the players conditioned to practice during the afternoons, kind of like when games would be. We were running full field scrimmage. So again, to have a good game-like feel. And Rory didn't seem to be taking things seriously. She was kind of dogging it that day.
And just to be clear for us, Coach Taylor, when you say dogging it, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, so sorry about that. She was, out of position a lot, missing shots on the goal, sloppy with her passes, and even more so, I guess, when I was pointing these things out to her, she wasn't taking the criticisms at all and seemed to really be ignoring the coaching, ignoring feedback, and not taking things seriously.
When you noticed that Rory didn't seem like she was taking things seriously, how did you react?
I wasn't happy. Like I said, I was giving her feedback and criticisms, and she was ignoring it. And after we did that dance for a little bit, I told her to go run the Burma Road.
Before we get into that, Coach Taylor, could you describe for us what the weather was like that afternoon?
Yeah, so September 7th, Central Texas, it was hot, as almost all days are during the summer in the beginning, early preseason. It was windy, like all days are here in Waco. Definitely on the warmer side of things, though.
Well, had you ever practiced before in these kind of weather conditions?
Absolutely. Every day we had practice at the same time. Same conditions every September, every August that we're practicing. It's hot.
And just to be clear, was Rory at each and every one of his practices under these conditions?
Yeah, of course.
Now, a moment ago, you told us that you sent Rory to go perform Burma Road. Can you explain for us exactly what that entails?
Yeah, so Burma Road is this kind of punishment running that has been around for back. I ran it back when I was in high school at Waco High. And essentially what you do is you run a 30-yard sprint, then you pick up a ball, dribble it, take a shot on an open goal, and then crawl back to start, and then repeat it.
You just said that this was a tradition at Waco High that even you yourself had performed. Was this something that you regularly put your own athletes to task?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was doing it in high school. The students here do it. Now, even today, it's a traditional type of thing that some coach way in the past created, I guess.
And how would you describe the safety of performing this Burma Road drill?
I don't think there's anything dangerous about it. You run sprints, dribble, and shoot in a game. It's a pretty, par for the course, just exercise.
Coach Taylor, from what you could see of how Rory was performing the Burma Road drill, what did you think?
Well, I don't think she was still taking the Burma Road terribly seriously either. Seemed like she wasn't putting her all into it. Again, not taking it seriously, kind of dogging it.
At any point, as you watched Rory complete this drill, did she stop to take a break?
No.
Did she ask you to take a break?
Didn't. No.
Did she ever go speak to the trainer that you mentioned, Jess Merriweather?
I don't believe so.
Did you ever see her leave to go drink some water?
No.
Well, Coach Taylor, tell us, what is your policy about taking breaks during practice?
I encourage the players to stay hydrated. If they need a break, ask for a break.
So, Coach Taylor, after you saw that Rory was lollygagging or dogging it, as you put it, what did you make her do?
So after she wasn't taking the Burma Road seriously, I had her come back over, and we were going to had her do a slide tackle drill.
Well, is the slide tackle drill something that you regularly have your students perform?
Not this drill particularly, but yeah, slide tackles are common in both games and practice, and it's something that you want to know how to do properly. One, so that you can do it correctly and appropriately as a defensive maneuver in a game, and then two, for your safety and the safety of other players. Something worth practicing.
So are slide tackle drills in and of themselves dangerous?
I wouldn't say they're inherently any more dangerous than any other aspect of the game.
So you said that you had Rory complete the slide tackle drill. Can you describe exactly how you set that up?
Yeah, so I had Rory kind of standing on the center of the field. Like I said, she was a leader on the team. People looked up to her. So I wanted to show the team that even the best among us need to take practice seriously. So she was kind of the center of attention. And then about 10 yards away, we lined up some of the players, and Rory was to dribble the ball at the players. One by one, they would come and try to slide tackle, steal the ball from her.
Coach Taylor, was the purpose of subjecting Rory to the slide tackle drill punishment?
I wouldn't say it was punishment. It was more to set an example, like I said, to make a statement, to let the team know that everyone on the team is to take practice seriously, that if we want to do well this season, we need to have structure, respect for the process, and that even the superstars are going to be held accountable when they are not taking things seriously.
And how many times exactly was this slide tackle drill repeated?
About 15 times.
Coach Taylor, what exactly happened to Rory during this drill?
Everything started off as normal. She was doing the drill fine. And then all of a sudden at the end, she just collapsed. And yeah.
As you were watching Rory complete these drills, did you have any reason to believe that Rory was in pain?
No, she didn't say anything to me or the trainer.
Did you have any reason to believe that Rory was in danger?
No.
Did you have any reason to believe that at the end of that practice you'd be calling an ambulance?
Absolutely not.
And to be clear, at any point during this drill, did Rory ask to stop?
No, she didn't.
Did Rory complain to you about any pain that she was feeling?
Rory never complained to me.
What about the trainer, Meriwether? Did she complain to him?
No.
Coach Taylor, if Rory had asked you to stop and take a break, would you have let her?
Absolutely. She told me that she wasn't feeling well, that had been a completely different circumstance.
Do you feel responsible at all for what happened to Rory Street?
No, I mean, I feel horrible about what happened, but it's not something I could have ever predicted to happen, not something I'd ever seen before happen, not something that's happened since.
I want to be clear about something, Coach Taylor. When your student athletes show up to the soccer field, are you expecting them to be clean and sober?
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect your players and students to, I guess, one, comply with the law, and two, be in primed and ready to go for practice, physically demanding soccer practice. You don't expect the students to show up with any substance in their system.
And if you had known that Rory had cocaine in her system on September 7th, 2018, would you have let her do any of the drills that day?
Absolutely not. I'd send her home, made her sit out practice. I mean, would not, if I would have known that, I would not have let her get out there and perform in that heat.
Thank you, Coach Taylor. Press the witness.
23-26 remaining. Mr. Booth, 25-34 remaining, ready to go whenever you are.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor.
Good afternoon.
Now, as you just told us, you've been coaching high school sports for the past 26 years.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, actually, it would have been 27 at this point, right?
Yeah, somewhere right around there. Yeah.
Fair to say it's what you do.
Yes, certainly what I made a living doing for the past long while now.
And at Waco High School, you're the head coach of the varsity soccer team.
Yeah, the women's varsity soccer team. Yes,
Held that position for 6 years.
that is correct.
You're well aware of the responsibilities you have as a head coach.
Sure. Yeah,
You set the practice schedule.
I do.
You decide when to actually hold those practices.
Yeah, within reason, I decide that. Yes.
You decide how long those students should practice for.
Yep.
Generally speaking, you're the guy who calls the shots.
Yeah, you could say that.
And the students that you're coaching, they're all teenagers.
Yes,
You're the adult at practice.
I am one of the adults in practice. Yeah,
Well, there's one other one, right?
Jess Merriweather, the trainer. Yeah,
But you're the head guy at practice, right?
I am the head guy.
And on September 7th, 2018, you were the head guy at practice for the women's varsity soccer team.
That is correct.
You planned a full scrimmage for that practice.
I did.
And that's what you did when the practice started at around 3:15 or 3:30.
Correct.
You held this practice even though you knew the weather was going to be particularly hot.
Yeah, most days are hot.
Well, actually, Mr. Taylor, you chose to practice on this day in the afternoon specifically because of the heat.
Yeah, to condition the players.
That's right. You wanted to toughen your players up.
Yeah, sure. Condition them.
So let's talk about how you treated Rory Street during that practice on September 7th. Now, during the scrimmage, you noticed Rory doing some things you didn't like.
Yeah, she was missing, out of position, missing passes.
So she was. I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor. You can finish.
Yeah, just saying things that she normally would do. Yes, she wasn't doing.
Got it. So you said she was missing passes.
Yep.
She was out of position.
Correct.
And she even missed some shots on open goal.
Yes.
But the worst thing for you was that you didn't think she was listening.
I know she wasn't listening.
That's because you were telling her things that she should fix and you didn't see any improvement.
That's right.
And sir, nothing makes you angry quite like that, right?
It's very frustrating when the players ignore you. Yes.
That in specifically, when a player ignores you, it makes you really angry.
It's definitely upsetting.
So when you saw that Rory wasn't listening to you, well, you decided to punish her.
Yeah, I had to run the Burma Road.
And as you said, Burma Road, that's a punishment that goes way back in Waco's history.
Absolutely.
You asked Rory to do that,
Did.
and she did.
Yes, she did.
She ran those sprints for 30 yards.
Yep.
And then she dribbled for another 30 yards, running as fast as she could.
Yep.
And then because you told her to, she got on the ground and she crawled back to where she'd started.
Yeah, that's the exercise.
But she couldn't just stop after she did it once, right, Mr. Taylor?
Typically, yeah, they do it more than one time.
Well, you specifically told her to just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's how the exercise worked. The players would just keep going until you stop them.
No, at no point while Rory was doing this exercise did you offer her any water.
She never asked for any either.
And I understand that, Mr. Taylor, but I'm asking about what you did, and you never offered to give her any water.
True. Yes,
And you never told her that she could take a break.
that is correct.
What you did tell her was that she couldn't stop until you said so.
Yep, that's how the drill went.
And Rory listened to you, right, Mr. Taylor?
That time she did. Yeah.
You asked Rory to run those sprints, and that's what she did.
Yes.
Sir, That really wasn't good enough for you, was it?
She wasn't putting her full effort in. I know that.
Well, that's right. You saw it. You thought, she's not trying hard enough. I've got to change it.
Yes. Yeah.
So you decided to punish her a different way.
How to run the slide tackling drill. Yeah, that's what you're referring to.
And as you just told us, the reason you asked Rory to do this drill that you just made up is because you wanted to make an example of her.
Correct.
You wanted to show to the rest of the team that Rory can't just get away with this.
It was to show the team that no one could get away with it. Yeah.
Including Rory.
Including her.
So let's talk about that drill that you had Rory run. So you had Rory stand, as you said, in the middle of the field.
That's correct. Yeah.
And standing opposite her with the rest of her teammates.
Yep.
They were all in a line.
Yes.
And under your instruction, you told Rory's teammates to go and knock the legs out from under Rory time and time again.
I told them to slide tackle.
Okay, so you asked them to dive leg first at Rory's legs.
At the ball.
At the ball, Mr. Taylor, but you did notice that each time Rory hit the ground, right?
That can happen in slide tackling.
So you told the players to hit the ball, but they ended up hitting her legs.
Yeah, I mean, I told them to slide and hit the ball.
Well, sir, is it your testimony that you were surprised that Rory hit the ground after a slide tackle?
I didn't say that, no.
Well,
Like
that's
I said,
because I apologize, Mr. Taylor.
common for people to trip over a slide tackle, yes.
That's right. In soccer, that happens all the time when someone gets slide tackled.
I agree, yeah.
And that's what happened when you did this drill.
Yes.
You would blow the whistle, right?
Yep.
One of her teammates would run over and dive at her legs.
Yep, sure.
And then Rory would collapse to the ground.
Yeah, trip. Yeah, sure.
And that happened over and over again under your supervision, Mr. Taylor. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's what happened.
And do you remember how many times you had students go and kick her legs out?
I think I said 15.
That's right, because after the 15th time, Rory couldn't even stand anymore, right, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, that's when she collapsed.
After that 15th time she hit the ground, she stopped moving.
Yeah.
She wasn't breathing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And I want to be clear about something. Just a moment ago on direct examination, you were asked, did you think you would be calling an ambulance that day, referring to September 7th? And your response was no. Now, to be clear, Mr. Taylor, you didn't call an ambulance that day.
Me personally, no.
So one was called, but it certainly wasn't you who did it.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly who phoned the ambulance.
Well, I'm sorry, you said you don't remember who owned the ambulance, Mr. Taylor?
Called, called.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, so one of your students falls on the ground in front of you and isn't moving, and you didn't even call an ambulance?
I was standing over checking on her.
Got it. I want to back up a little bit. Now, Mr. Taylor, if I understand correctly, you have no regrets about your actions on September 7th.
I mean, with hindsight, if I knew then what I know now, I definitely prevented it. But at the time, I didn't do anything I thought was out of the ordinary for typical coaching. No.
Well, just looking back at what you did on September 7th, you believe that you didn't do anything wrong.
No, I don't think I did anything out of the ordinary. No.
Sir, a student died at your soccer practice. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
A student who is under your care, one of your athletes.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
But looking back, you don't have any regrets.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move off that question. It's sustained.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Got 1541 remaining. Need redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused?
He may. So you've got 23 minutes and 26 seconds left. Are you moving on to something else? You calling another witness? Or?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to read in portions of Jess and Meriwether's deposition testimony.
Absolutely. You're free to do so.
If it's all right with the court, I'd like to use my second chair, Mr. White, to read in the responses.
Absolutely. That's fine.
Directing the court's attention to Jess Meriwether's deposition testimony, page 2.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Point of order. It does look like the lights are about to cut off in the courtroom, so I'm just gonna mess with the sensor really quickly.
I apologize for that, Your Honor.
It's a nice dramatic effect.
All right. Looks like we'll start with page 2.
Okay, give him a chance to sit down. You ready, Mr. White? Tell us.
Yes.
Mr. White, page 2, line 8, starting there. Hello there. Oh, excuse me, line 6. Good morning. Would you please state your name, spelling your last for the record?
Hello there. My name is Jess Meriwether.
Mr. White, if we can move over to page 4. For the court's reference, I'll be referring to lines 6 through 11. In what capacity do you work for Coach Taylor?
As a trainer. So I've attended soccer practices and soccer games where Coach Taylor was the coach. I've worked with Coach Taylor in order to treat injured players, and I've worked with Coach Taylor just overseeing the students during practices and games.
Moving on to page 8. Lines 18 through 21. At any time, did you see Rory stumbling, faltering, or slowing down in a way that would have indicated she was in trouble?
No, not at all.
And top of the next page, page 9, lines 1 through 3. Did Rory ever say anything to you about feeling bad that day?
Nope. It never said anything to me. And here's the thing. I'm there to take care of those players, and they know it. I'm kind of a combination trainer and guardian to the team. So they trust me, and I trust them to tell me if something is wrong or if they're hurting. Roy didn't.
Objection, Your Honor, and I apologize for interrupting. Just that this is now becoming speculative language about speaking about what the members of the team knew, and that's a mental state that this witness would be testifying to.
Your Honor, we're fine with striking everything that follows, so they trust me. Or everything starting with that sentence.
Okay, so if you agree with it, then I'll sustain the objection.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You may continue.
Moving on, Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to read in a portion of the toxicology, we'd like to read in a portion of the autopsy report.
At your leisure.
Specifically on the second page. Opinion. While the cause of death is listed above, we are unable to determine the cause of the sudden cardiac death that took place in this case. And finally, Your Honor, we'd like to move to Exhibit 18.
Perfect.
And read 2 portions, starting on page 2, under the heading Overview of Opinion. Here's the opinion that I have reached in this case, based on a reasonable degree of professional and or medical certainty. Rory Street's death was caused, at least in part, by the use of cocaine. And finally, turn to the next page, page 3. There's the last paragraph. It is true that the amount of cocaine found in Rory Street's system was nominal, only 60 nanograms per milliliter. However, Rory Street's blood was drawn long after her death, and potentially even longer after Rory actually ingested the cocaine. Therefore, this test may not represent the actual amount of cocaine that was in Rory Street's blood at the time of the incident or earlier in that day. And it is possible that the amount of cocaine in the system was actually much higher throughout the course of that day leading up to practice. And with that, Your Honor, the defense rushed their case in chief and would request a brief 5-minute recess to prepare for closing arguments.
Okay, you've got 1953 left. Do we have anything else, Mr. Booth, before we take a brief break?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we take that break and get ready for closing arguments, I would like to present rebuttal evidence, which is permitted in this jurisdiction.
Give me 1 second to reset your clock. Okay, hold on.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have 1953 left, Ms. Lighting.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And Your Honor, a little bit of back. Oh, I'm sorry. Are we still waiting on the clock? Sorry.
Okay, ready for you now. 1541 on the clock.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to display the expert report that is already in evidence from Dr. McConaughey. That is Exhibit 16, and read from portions at the bottom of page 3 and continuing on to the top of page 4.
Very good.
Thank you, Ms. Giuseppe. It is also my opinion, within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. First, even if there was cocaine use on the day in question, there is no indication that Rory Street was a habitual user of cocaine, as indicated on the autopsy report by the fact that there was no irritation of the throat. Drug tests for cocaine typically have a lower cutoff level between 5 and 150 nanograms per milliliter, with 5 being very low and 150 being high. The amount of cocaine found in Rory Street's system was only 60 nanograms per milliliter, which is a finding consistent with the ingestion of only a nominal amount of cocaine, or that there was a great deal of time between ingestion and testing. And with that, Your Honor, we're ready to move on to closing arguments.
You have 1416 remaining for your close. Again, 2-minute break. Let's make this really quick because we've got to roll into the next round, I believe at 2:30. So we need to get this moving quickly. If any of the scoring judges need to take a bathroom break in this time, like we did last time, turn your camera on. That way I can see that you're gone and we wait for you to return. Okay. Otherwise, I'll wait on counsel to signal me that we're ready.
And Your Honor, I'm sorry, how much time did you say I have left?
You've got 1416.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And Ms. Lighty, you've got 1953.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. All right, folks, we about ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
It looks like all my judges are in the room, so Mr. Booth, whenever you're ready, you can begin. You've got 1416 remaining.
Your Honor, I ask that any remaining time be held for rebuttal.
Absolutely.
May it please the court. I would not have done anything differently. An 18-year-old high school student died at the defendant's soccer practice, trying to complete the defendant's punishment. But when the defendant took the stand, it's like it never happened. Do you remember what he was like when he was answering questions on the stand? Laughing, smirking. Didn't seem to understand that we're here today because his actions caused the death of an 18-year-old. Clearly, he wasn't taking this seriously, and all he was interested in was pushing blame onto anyone and everyone he could, with Rory Street's clear in his sights. That, for me, Your Honor, was the defining moment of this trial. And that tells you everything you need to know about who Mr. Taylor is. You can make some inferences about how he treats his students and how he treated Rory Street on the day in question, September 7th. What we heard today is that this defendant will work a student to death and then throw his hands up in the air and say, "Not my fault." That's because for this defendant, discipline and physical abuse, they're one and the same. And that is all tied into the power that Mr. Taylor lords over those teenage girls. If a student talks back to him, well, that was a mistake. He makes them run until they pass out. If a student pisses him off, he'll tell their teammates to line up and then hit them over and over again until they can't even stand. And even when he forces them back up onto their feet, when it's clear that one of his students can't go any further, he just keeps pushing. He says, "Keep going." And on September 7th, when the defendant did that to Rory Street in 105-degree weather, that wasn't discipline. It was physical abuse, and it caused her death. Now, as the plaintiff, we brought this case to court today, and that means we had to prove it. We had to prove that the defendant was negligent and that that negligence was a proximate cause of Rory Street's death. We've met that burden. Now, when we look at the defendant's negligence in this case, it breaks down into two distinct categories. We have the defendant's actions that were negligent, but then we have the defendant's failure to act, to help people that were under his control and supervision. And that was also negligent. We know that when we're talking about negligence, we're looking at the reasonable person standard. So I want to walk through the evidence we heard today, and I want to start by discussing the defendant's negligent actions. Now, the entire series of events that brought us to court today, it really stems down to one simple thing. Mr. Taylor can't control his anger. You heard from Aubrey Saracen today, the classmate of Rory's. She was on the soccer team. She was at that practice on September 7th, and she told you just how angry Mr. Taylor got over the smallest things. And Mr. Taylor, when he was on the stand, he tried to justify his anger and tell you that he was right for getting upset. But that's just standard rhetoric from a bully. When we look at Rory's actions, what was there to punish? She had an off day, and for some reason, Mr. Taylor, he just couldn't handle it. It made him livid. He just couldn't control his anger. Your Honor, we have to start our analysis of this case by looking at the fact that Mr. Taylor just couldn't control his emotions. This is the power dynamic that led to Rory's death. A teenager has an off day, and it's the adult coach at practice who's unable to control their temper. We heard that at this practice, Mr. Taylor got angrier and angrier, and he demanded more and more of Rory until she was lying on the ground dead. There's only one person responsible for Mr. Taylor's actions, Mr. Taylor's temper. That's Mr. Taylor. Now, when he lost his temper, what he demanded of Rory, it wasn't discipline. It was physical abuse. I understand. High school sports, they can be intense for good reason. If you're good, the way Rory Street was good, then it can get you into college, get you scholarships. And we expect coaches to push and challenge their students. But on September 7th, that's not what the defendant was doing. He wasn't being a reasonable coach. He wasn't doing his best to make Rory better. In his own words, he was making an example out of her. He was just being a bully. And by the way, have you noticed that this entire trial, opposing counsel, they've insisted on calling the defendant Coach Taylor? Well, a man who treats students the way that that man treated Rory doesn't deserve that title. What he did to Rory wasn't coaching, and it certainly wasn't reasonable. It was physical abuse. Your Honor, that brings me to that second category of negligence, the defendant's failure to act. And numerous times on September 7th, Mr. Taylor should have realized that Rory was in trouble. And opposing counsel has tried to play a game here where, something was horribly wrong with Rory. She was acting differently. This was our star athlete, and she just couldn't do anything right on September 7th. But then when you ask Coach or Mr. Taylor whether he should have known that something was wrong with Rory, oh, no, I had no idea. No way of knowing. On one hand, they tell you there was nothing wrong. And on the other hand, they tell you that Rory was not herself, acting completely different. Your Honor, the truth is clear. Rory was acting differently, and everyone could see it. When Mr. Taylor saw that Rory was acting differently, he didn't check in on her, didn't try to see if she was okay. He just punished her because he could. Any reasonable coach would have done simple things to keep their players safe. Ask her if she needed water. Ask her if she wanted to take a break. These are things that could have saved Rory's life and would have taken Mr. Taylor 5 seconds. Mr. Taylor was the proximate cause of Rory Street's death. And when we're talking about a proximate cause, we have to prove that Mr. Taylor's acts or omissions were such that a person using ordinary care would have foreseen that the event or similar event was reasonably foreseeable, that it was likely to occur. Your Honor, you saw the autopsy report that was done for Rory Street. In that report, it says that Rory Street died because of sudden cardiac death. Now, because the medical examiner couldn't tell us much more than that, we sought out an expert who could, a cardiologist. Ms. DiGiuseppe, can we look at the opinion from Dr. McConaughey? Here is the opinion I have reached in this case. Based on a reasonable degree of professional and or medical certainty, Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. And based on what we heard, it's really not surprising. It was 105 degrees out when Mr. Taylor kept pushing and pushing. Make no mistake, it was the physical exertion that caused Rory's death. But opposing counsel has brought up the 60 nanograms of cocaine in Rory's system. So let's talk about that. Ms. DiGiuseppe, can you pull up Mr. McConaughey's or Dr. McConaughey's report again, where it talks about cocaine? Now, in that report, Dr. McConaughey, a cardiologist, said that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. There was absolutely no indication that Rory Street was a habitual user of cocaine. And Dr. McConaughey described that level of cocaine found in Rory's body as nominal. Your Honor, more likely than not, Rory Street did not die from 60 nanograms of cocaine. More likely than not, Rory Street suffered from heat stroke because her soccer coach forced her to physically exert herself to the point of death. And when a student dies under a coach's supervision, trying to complete that coach's punishment, saying, I'm a tough coach and that's just sports, that's not acceptable. Rory Street's death was so preventable. The young woman we're looking at in this photograph should be here today, but she's not. And instead, we're litigating her final moments because of the defendant's actions, the defendant's anger, his complete failure to use reasonable care brought us here. Find Mr. Taylor liable. Thank you.
306 remaining for rebuttal.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I guess just one quick point of order, just when we go sub 10 minutes, I'll give you the hand signals. And then once you go under a minute, I'll give you the half-minute mark, and then I'll just tell you to stop, okay? I don't think that's going to be an issue, to be clear. Whenever you're ready, Simone.
Yes, Your Honor. The problem wasn't the coach, it was the cocaine. I want to start by extending my deepest sympathies to Rory's mother, Jordan, and the rest of the Street family. Because we all understand, when we lose a loved one, it's unimaginable. In fact, it's in those moments of grief that we look for someone, anyone, to blame. And in this situation, it was even more unfortunate because Rory Street put herself at risk. What you heard throughout today's trial is that Rory Street entered that soccer field with cocaine running through her blood. Now, this was something that Coach Taylor and trainer Jess Merriweather had not accounted for. Because as you heard from multiple witnesses today, including Aubrey Sarenser and Coach Taylor himself, there was an expectation that on that field, everyone showed up clean and sober. Now, opposing counsel's right. On September 7th, 2018, Rory was acting differently. But make no mistake, this difference in behavior was not the result of heat exhaustion or heat stroke as they're alleging. This is the result of cocaine use. Now, to be clear, we're not suggesting that Rory was someone who regularly used cocaine before practice. In fact, it's quite possible that maybe this was the first time that she was experimenting. The fact still remains that we just don't know. What we do know is that there was cocaine in her system and that it affected her that very day during soccer practice. You see, this had nothing to do with the coach and everything to do with the cocaine. I want to tell you about a really, really important document in this case. It's called the jury charge. An opposing counsel elected not to show you it, but as the defense, we're not afraid of this document. What this document is going to ask you to do is it's going to ask you to assign whether or not Coach Taylor was negligent. And if he was negligent, and perhaps even if Rory Street was negligent about the way that she conducted herself and put herself at risk, we're going to ask you to allocate a percentage of blame. So let's start with negligence. Negligence means the failure to use care, or in this situation, Coach Taylor's failure to run practice in a similar way that other coaches would run their practice. So if you think that Coach Taylor acted as a reasonable soccer coach would when he imposed discipline on a student athlete that just wouldn't listen, and Coach Taylor can't be found liable. So let's start with what exactly happened on September 7th, 2018. Yes, it was in the afternoon, and yes, it was hot. I mean, it's Waco, Texas, and it gets hot here. And it's been hot here for the 26 years that Coach Taylor has been holding afternoon practices in the heat. In fact, as Aubrey said on direct examination, that afternoon was, quote, a typical Waco afternoon. We agree, it was 105. But the fact still remains, this was nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, as Coach Taylor told you before, as Aubrey herself told you before, they have run practices, drills, scrimmages, and even games in this very, kind of condition. And as far as we heard today, there was nothing to suggest that anyone had suffered heat stroke or heat exhaustion before. So why was this day so special? Well, the easy answer to that question, by the time Rory got to practice, he was already sick. You see, the issue at practice wasn't whether or not the athletes were allowed to take breaks, whether or not they were allowed to go sit in the shade, whether or not they were allowed to go get water, because in fact, they were allowed to do each and every one of those things. The issue at this practice was discipline. Coach Taylor told you, Rory just wasn't listening. I mean, you have a star player who influences all the other players on the team, all of whom look up to this player, someone who has the greatest potential, someone who Coach Taylor cares for and treats as one of his own, and yet that day was goofing off. Passing the ball was difficult. Getting to the right position was difficult. Making a goal in a wide open net with nothing to obstruct your kick, that seemed impossible that day. And so in Coach Taylor's mind, he's thinking, well, something must be wrong. She's not taking this seriously. So of course, he sends her over to do the Burma Road drills. Again, as we heard throughout trial, this was nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, as Aubrey told you herself, Aubrey had been doing this very drill repeatedly before Rory even showed up. She wasn't struggling. In the 105-degree Waco heat, she wasn't feeling chest pains. She wasn't told that she couldn't take a break. Neither of them stopped to go talk to the coach. Neither of them stopped to go talk to the trainer. And while she was able to handle each and every one of those drills, Rory was not. Within minutes of performing some of these drills, all of a sudden, Rory starts not feeling well. But I want you to remember who told you all of this information, because it certainly wasn't Coach Taylor, who was watching Rory and Aubrey complete these tasks. It was Aubrey who told you this. Someone who had been a good friend to Rory. Someone who the very next day, when this whole incident is fresh in her mind, tells a friend that everything just happened so suddenly. That everything just happened out of nowhere. What she didn't say was, the entire practice Rory had been struggling. The entire practice he looked pale in the face and lifeless. The entire practice he was complaining to me, please, I need to stop. Please, I don't feel better. Please, my chest hurts. No. What she says is, it all happened so suddenly. In fact, that's the same belief that Coach Taylor held. Everything just happened so suddenly. On September 7, 2018, there was no way for any amount of intervention or safety measures to protect Rory Street from his eventual tragedy. It's because of what I talked about in opening statement, the ticking time bomb. And that brings me to proximate cause. See, it's not enough to just say that, well, Coach Taylor wasn't acting how a coach should that day. You have to prove that that it was, in fact, all of these drills, that the constant pressure and physical exertion that Rory was experiencing that actually caused her death. But I'm here to tell you today, that's not the case. In fact, as toxicologist Spencer London told you, it was the cocaine. 60 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine was found in Rory's blood. And as much as opposing counsel would like to downplay that amount as nominal, Mr. London told you on the report, it sure sounds nominal. But keep in mind, this blood was drawn. This report was made 26 plus hours after the incident. And as Mr. London said, at the time of the soccer practice, the amount of cocaine pumping through her blood could have been substantially higher. The issue was never with the coach. It was always with the cocaine. It was never with the drills. Certainly wasn't with Burma Road. Certainly wasn't a drill that was a tried and true tradition that everybody else was able to perform perfectly fine, including Rory herself every single day before September 7th. And so they want to tell you it was the slide tackle drill. And I'll agree on one point with you. This type of drill had never been done before. But make no mistake, slide tackle drills had. In fact, as Coach Taylor told you, slide tackle drills were a regular practice during scrimmages, during games. And so in order to maintain safety, they wanted to run through those drills again and again and again. I want you to remember what Coach Taylor told you. As you saw Rory fall to the ground and come back up, nothing looked out of the ordinary. Rory didn't look pale and lifeless as Aubrey had described. Rory never asked for a break, but Coach Taylor told me that if Rory had, he certainly would have given her one. If Rory had asked to go speak with trainer Merriweather, he certainly would have allowed her. And if Rory had asked to drink some water and stop, he would have done that too. The issue was never the drills. It was always the cocaine. Opposing counsel tried to tell you that the cause of death was a heart attack, and we agree with that point. What he's glossing over, the little sentence on the next page. Although the cause of death is a sudden cardiac attack, we can't determine what caused it. And if you find that more likely than not, it was the impact and the effects of the cocaine use on September 7, 2018, you have to find Coach Taylor not liable. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that when Rory made the decision to experiment with a potentially lethal drug on September 7th, it invited tragedy. It's unfortunate that perhaps even she wasn't aware, and when she stepped onto that soccer field and engaged in each and every one of these drills, but she didn't know what was going to happen at the end of practicing. But just because something unfortunate happens does not mean that we can place blame on someone who didn't cause it. Because in this case, Rory put herself at risk. We ask that you find Coach Taylor not liable. It never had anything to do with the coach, and everything to do with the cocaine. Thank you.
Ready for rebuttal when you are.
Yes, Your Honor. At the beginning of this trial, I told you that my side isn't the only one with the burden. And that's because the defendant also took on a burden in this case. They decided to prove, they said they would prove to you that Rory's death was her own fault. And as you just heard from opposing counsel's closing argument, they're putting all their chips on that bet. That you'll think that Rory herself was responsible for what happened. And the 60 nanograms of cocaine, that's their smoking gun. You just heard all about it. But they told you, yes, 60 nanograms of cocaine, that's not a lot. But we don't know. It could have been more. And the problem for the defense is that when they take on a burden, as Your Honor knows, they can't simply say something could have happened. They need to prove it to you. When they took on that burden of proving that Rory was the cause of her own death, they needed to support that with evidence, not assumptions. Not saying that something could have been different. We're looking at the evidence. It says 60 nanograms per milliliter. And you heard from that report from Dr. McConaughey, the only expert in cardiology who spoke or who actually put in evidence in this case. Cardiologist said this was heat stroke. Plain and simple. Now, opposing counsel, they asked a toxicologist to come and to talk about how cocaine caused Rory's death. But the problem is that Rory's death was caused by her heart. Sudden cardiac death. And then they called an expert who has absolutely no idea anything about a heart. Toxicologist, not a cardiologist, doesn't have training in what causes a human heart to fail, has no expertise. In this report, he just says this could have happened, just like there could have been more cocaine. That's not good enough, Your Honor. We've proven that on September 7, 2018, Rory Street died because of Mr. Taylor's actions. He couldn't figure out the line between discipline and physical abuse, and it was Rory Street who paid the price, I ask that you find Mr. Taylor liable. Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm going to take my ruling under advisement, and court will now stand in recess. Scoring judges, if you can go ahead and email your ballots in, and then just hang out in the room until I get the all clear. Thank you, and that includes the competitors. Very good round, had a lot of fun. Yeah, that's good job, second chairs as well. That was a really good job.